I got that phone call on a Tuesday evening. After 7 years of silence, seeing my father's name flash across my screen felt like being punched in the stomach. When I answered, his voice cracked as he said, "Son, I know the truth now." My hands trembled. The life I had rebuilt after being cast away was comfortable, successful even, but hollow without family. That single accusation from my stepmother had stolen everything from me overnight. Now my father wanted to talk, but was I ready to listen? I never thought this day would come. If you are watching this right now, have you ever had someone from your past try to re-enter your life? Hit like. If you believe truth, eventually wins, and subscribe to hear more real-life stories like this one. My childhood was picture-perfect until I turned 12. I grew up in a beautiful colonial home in Massachusetts with sprawling gardens my mother tended with meticulous care. Mom was my world. She read to me every night, taught me to bake her famous apple pie, and never missed a single baseball game. Dad worked long hours at the family manufacturing company, but always made time for our weekend fishing trips. We were that family everyone envied, with genuine love flowing through our home. When Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, our perfect world crumbled overnight. The disease moved aggressively, giving us only 8 months to say goodbye. I still remember her final words to me. "Be good for your father, Brad. He will need you now." I was 12, too young to fully process the magnitude of the loss, but old enough to feel the gaping hole her absence left in our lives. Dad retreated into his work after her funeral. Our spacious home became a mausoleum of memories, with her gardening gloves still hanging by the back door and her favorite coffee mug untouched in the cupboard. I did my best to keep things running, learning to do laundry and cook simple meals. My grandparents helped when they could, but they lived across the country in Arizona. We were essentially alone, 2 planets orbiting the sun that had vanished. The company had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it from nothing into a multi-million-dollar business manufacturing specialized medical equipment. My father had doubled its value since taking over as CEO, securing government contracts and expanding into international markets. It was understood that someday it would all be mine. I grew up visiting the factory floor, learning about the business from the ground up. For 3 years, Dad and I existed in a fragile routine of work, school, and silent dinners. Then everything changed at the annual charity gala for the Children's Hospital. That was where he met Stephanie. She approached him during the silent auction, a striking woman with auburn hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I stood by the refreshment table watching as she laughed at something my father said, her hand lingering too long on his arm. There was a calculated precision to her movements that made me uneasy, but I dismissed my concerns. Dad deserved happiness after years of grieving. Their relationship moved at warp speed. Within weeks, she was joining us for dinner. By the 3rd month, her toiletries had their own drawer in my father's bathroom. 6 months after they met, Dad announced they were getting married. No engagement period, no time to adjust. Just a small ceremony at City Hall, with me as the only witness. I smiled and congratulated them. But something felt off about the whole situation. I tried to like Stephanie. I really did. Annofyou.com. Annofyou.com. She made Dad laugh again, which I had not heard since Mom died. She redecorated our house, erasing the last traces of my mother with sleek modern furniture and abstract art. When Dad was around, she called me sweetie and asked about school. But when he left for work, her demeanor changed entirely. "Your father works so hard to provide this lifestyle for us," she would say, eyeing me with thinly veiled contempt. "You should be more grateful and less demanding of his attention." I was 15, hardly demanding anything. Most days I came home from school, did my homework, and stayed out of the way. But Stephanie seemed determined to paint me as a problem child to my father. Little comments about my attitude, exaggerated sighs when I entered a room, complaints about my friends being too loud when they visited. 6 months after the wedding, I came home early from basketball practice to find Stephanie in my father's study, rifling through filing cabinets. She slammed the drawer shut when she saw me and claimed she was looking for stamps, but her flushed face told a different story. I mentioned it to Dad that night, but he brushed it off with a laugh. "She is just trying to learn more about the family business, son." Things got even more complicated when Stephanie's daughter from a previous marriage moved in with us. Ashley was 16, a year older than me, with her mother's auburn hair and calculating eyes. From day one, she treated our house like a hotel, leaving messes everywhere, and speaking to me only when absolutely necessary. She and Stephanie would whisper together late into the night, their conversation stopping abruptly whenever I walked by. On my 18th birthday, my grandfather invited me to his office at the company headquarters. He closed the door and explained the details of my inheritance for the first time. The bulk of the family fortune and controlling interest in the company will come to you when you turn 21, he said, showing me the legal documents. Your grandmother and I set this up as a trust that cannot be altered by anyone, including your father. We love him, but he can be too trusting sometimes. Grandfather's words made more sense a few weeks later when I overheard Stephanie on the phone in the garden. I have tried everything to get him to change the will, she hissed to someone. But the old man has it locked up tight. We need to think of something else. I began paying closer attention after that. I discovered through some internet searches that Stephanie had a history of credit card debt and had filed for bankruptcy just before meeting my father. She had been married twice before each time, to wealthy men, each marriage ending mysteriously after a few years. I found no records of her supposed career in international consulting that she had bragged about to my father. The closer I got to my 21st birthday, the more tense things became at home. Dad was traveling more frequently for work, leaving Stephanie in charge of the household. She began throwing lavish parties with people I had never met, charging everything to my father's accounts. When I questioned one particularly expensive catering bill, she smiled coldly and said, "Your father works hard for his money. He deserves to enjoy it however he wants." What she really meant was however she wanted. 3 weeks before my 21st birthday, I was preparing for the formal celebration my grandfather had planned at the company headquarters. The event would mark my official introduction as the future CEO and majority shareholder. Invitations had gone out to business partners, family friends, and industry leaders. I had just graduated with my business degree and was eager to start learning the ropes at the company. The atmosphere at home had become unbearably tense. Stephanie barely spoke to me directly anymore, communicating through Ashley or leaving terse notes about household matters. Dad seemed oblivious to the strain, constantly mediating between us with weary patience. "You two just need to find some common ground," he would say, as if we were squabbling over the television remote rather than engaged in a cold war. One evening I came home early from the gym and overheard Stephanie and Ashley talking in the kitchen. I paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop until I heard my name. "Brad turning 21 changes everything," Stephanie whispered urgently. "Once he gets control of that money, we will be completely shut out." "So what exactly is the plan, Mom?" Ashley asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. "Do not worry about the details," Stephanie replied. "Just remember what I told you about the timing and sticking to the story. If we do this right, your future is set." I backed away silently, my heart racing. Whatever they were planning could not be good, but I had no concrete evidence of anything. Who would believe my suspicions over the word of my stepmother? Certainly not my father, who remained completely enchanted by her. To my surprise, Stephanie's attitude toward me shifted dramatically the following day. She was suddenly solicitous, asking about my preferences for dinner and inquiring about my plans after graduation. The abrupt change was more unsettling than her previous hostility. "We should celebrate your birthday a little early," she suggested at dinner that night. "Just the family before all those boring business parties begin." Dad beamed at this apparent olive branch. "That is a wonderful idea, honey. What do you think, Brad trapped?" I nodded agreement. "Sounds good. Thanks." 2 nights later, Stephanie prepared an elaborate dinner. She insisted on pouring the wine herself, bringing me glass after glass of an expensive Cabernet. "It is not every day my stepson turns 21, she said, with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Let us make it memorable." The wine tasted slightly off, but I attributed it to my inexperienced palate. By the 3rd glass, the room was spinning pleasantly. Ashley kept encouraging me to drink more, toasting to my future and my health. Dad seemed happy to see us all getting along, though he himself drank sparingly, claiming an early meeting the next day. My memories of the rest of the evening are fragmented. I remember Stephanie helping me up the stairs when I stumbled, Dad chuckling about my low tolerance. I recall collapsing onto my bed, fully clothed, the ceiling swirling above me. Then nothing until the next morning. I woke to the sound of shouting. My head felt like it was splitting open, my mouth desert dry. Sunlight stabbed through my curtains like knives. Before I could orient myself, my bedroom door crashed open, revealing my father's contorted face. "How could you?" he roared, yanking me up by my arm. "Your own stepmother. What kind of monster have I raised?" I blinked at him, confused and nauseated. "What are you talking about?" Stephanie appeared behind him, her face streaked with tears, her silk robe torn at the shoulder. Angry red scratches marked her collarbone and neck. I tried to help him to bed, she sobbed. He was so drunk. Then he grabbed me and tried to. She broke off, burying her face in her hands. Ashley appeared, putting an arm around her mother, protectively glaring at me with hatred. "She came to check on him this morning," Ashley said coldly, "to see if he needed aspirin." And he attacked her again. I heard her screaming. I did not. I protested, my foggy brain struggling to make sense of these accusations. I would never. "I saw the whole thing," Ashley insisted. "Just like last night when you cornered her in the hallway. You have been looking at Mom that way for months." Dad's face had gone from red to ghostly white. He stared at me like I was a stranger. "Get out of my house," he whispered, his voice trembling with fury. "Dad, please," I begged, panic rising in my throat. "They are lying. I would never touch Stephanie. Think about it. Why would I?" "Because you resent her," Ashley interjected. "You have made that clear since day one, and now you are angry that she and your dad are happy together." Stephanie straightened up, her tearful demeanor suddenly controlled. "I will not press charges, Frank," she told my father, "for your sake. But I cannot stay under the same roof as him." "You will not have to," my father assured her. Then he turned to me, his eyes cold. "Pack what you can carry and be gone in 30 minutes. If you ever come near my wife again, I will not stop her from going to the police." "The inheritance," I said desperately. "That is what this is about. She wants my inheritance." The accusation earned me a stinging slap across the face from my father. "You disgust me. Attacking an innocent woman, and then trying to blame her. Get out before I throw you out myself." 30 minutes later, I stood on the sidewalk with a duffel bag containing some clothes and my laptop. My phone had been disconnected, my car keys confiscated since the vehicle was in my father's name. I had $200 in my wallet and nothing else. I went straight to my grandfather's house, certain he would see through this obvious setup. But when I arrived, a stern-faced housekeeper informed me he was not receiving visitors and shut the door in my face. Later I learned that Stephanie had called him immediately after I left, spinning a tale about my violent attack and inappropriate obsession with her. In desperation, I tried our family lawyer. His secretary would not let me pass the reception area. "Mr. Harrington has asked us to inform you that he no longer represents your interests," she said stiffly. "Please leave before we call security." Within 24 hours, I was completely cut off. My bank accounts were frozen. My school enrollment suspended pending an investigation into my character. Rumors spread through our social circle, with details becoming more lurid with each retelling. Some claimed I had been stalking Stephanie for months. Others suggested I had threatened Ashley too. A week after the accusations, I received a formal letter from a different law firm. My father had initiated proceedings to change his will, removing me entirely. A restraining order was being processed to keep me away from the family home and business premises. The letter ended with a warning that any attempts to contact family members would result in criminal charges. I had lost everything because of a lie. My car became my temporary home. I parked in different Walmart lots each night, using the store bathrooms to clean up before anyone noticed. My meager savings dwindled quickly, despite rationing food to one meal a day. I applied for any job I could find, but without a permanent address or references, doors closed before I could get a foot in. 3 weeks after being thrown out, I landed a position bussing tables at a diner on the outskirts of town. The pay was minimal, mostly tips, but the manager let me shower in the employee bathroom and eat leftover food at the end of shifts. I worked 14-hour days exhausting myself, so I would not lie awake thinking about how drastically my life had imploded. I met Thomas during the lunch rush on a Tuesday. He was a regular customer, always ordering the same thing, a tuna melt and black coffee, and reading academic journals while he ate. That day, I accidentally knocked his coffee over while clearing an adjacent table. Instead of getting angry, he helped me mop up the mess. "You look like you have not slept in days, son," he observed, his kind eyes, assessing me behind wire-rimmed glasses. I learned he was a professor of engineering at the state university. Something about his gentle demeanor reminded me of my grandfather, and I found myself telling him bits of my story during his subsequent visits. Thomas did not offer pity, which I appreciated. Instead, he brought me application forms for the university and information about financial aid and scholarships. "Your circumstances should not define your future," he said firmly. "Education is the one thing no one can take from you." With his guidance, I secured a partial scholarship and student loans for the rest. I found a tiny studio apartment near campus that I could just afford by working weekends at the diner. For the first time since the accusation, I felt a glimmer of hope. College became my salvation. I threw myself into studies, maintaining a perfect GPA while working nearly full-time. The routine kept the depression at bay most days, though nights were still difficult. I would lie awake wondering if my father ever questioned Stephanie's story, if he missed me at all, if anyone from my old life ever thought about me. I made few friends, keeping people at arm's length. The betrayal had left me wary of close relationships. Still, I could not help checking social media occasionally for glimpses of my old life. I saw photos of my father and Stephanie at charity events, her smile triumphant. I learned Ashley had been accepted to an exclusive private college, undoubtedly paid for with money that should have funded my education. Thomas and his wife, Maria, became my surrogate family. They invited me for Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations, never pushing for more information than I was ready to share. Their home provided the warmth and acceptance I desperately missed. Upon graduation, I was recruited by a tech startup developing medical device software. The irony was not lost on me that I would end up in the same industry as my family's business, just from a different angle. I worked obsessively, channeling all my anger and hurt into innovation. Within 2 years, I had developed a patented algorithm that revolutionized how surgical robots operated. When the company was acquired by a larger corporation, my stock options made me wealthy in my own right. I could have bought a mansion, traveled the world, indulged in luxuries. Instead, I invested most of the money and started my own small firm, determined to build something meaningful on my terms. Despite outward success, the wound of my family's betrayal remained unhealed. I saw a therapist weekly, working through the anger and abandonment issues. Holidays were the hardest. Each Thanksgiving and Christmas, I would draft emails to my father that I never sent, ranging from furious tirades to desperate pleas for reconciliation. None of them seemed right, so they remained in my drafts folder, digital ghosts of the relationship we once had. I kept tabs on the family business through industry news. It appeared to be thriving initially under my father's continued leadership, expanding into new markets. But around the 5-year mark after my departure, I noticed concerning signs. They lost several major contracts. There were layoffs reported in the local business journal. Something was wrong, but I had no way of knowing what. Then, 7 years after being cast out, I received an email from an address I did not recognize. The subject line read simply, "About Stephanie." My finger hovered over the delete button, assuming it was spam or some cruel joke. Curiosity won, and I opened it. "Brad, you do not know me anymore, but I need to talk to you about my mother and what happened. I have proof she lied. Please meet me. Ashley." I stared at the screen for nearly an hour, emotions warring within me. Why now? Was this another trap? Eventually, I replied with a public location and a time, determined to hear her out but prepared for deception. Ashley looked nothing like the teenage girl from my memories. Her face was drawn, her once glossy hair dull and carelessly pulled back. She slid into the booth across from me at the diner, hands trembling around her coffee mug. "Thank you for coming," she began, not quite meeting my eyes. "I owe you an apology that can never be adequate. For the next hour, she laid out the truth I had always known but could never prove. Stephanie had drugged my drinks that night, planning the accusation down to the self-inflicted scratches and torn clothing. Ashley had been coached for weeks on what to say, promised a lavish college experience and future security if she played along. "She made me believe you deserved it," Ashley whispered. "That you were this entitled rich kid who would waste the company fortune while we struggled. I was 17 and stupid and selfish. Why come clean now?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions. Ashley pulled out a flash drive. "Because she is destroying everything. Your dad's company is nearly bankrupt from her spending and mismanagement. She has been having affairs embezzling money, even forging your dad's signature on documents. I found her journal, where she documented everything, including what she did to you. There are recordings, bank statements, everything." She pushed the drive across the table. "Your dad had a minor heart attack last month. When I visited him in the hospital, he was looking at old family photos of you. I cannot stay silent anymore. I took the flash drive, not certain what I would do with it. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to continue the life I had built, without looking back. But another part, the part that still remembered fishing trips and bedtime stories, needed closure. The evidence was irrefutable. Stephanie's own words documented the plan to frame me her satisfaction at succeeding her systematic looting of the company accounts. There were photos of her with various men, while my father was traveling for business. Bank transfers to offshore accounts under her maiden name. It was a meticulous record of betrayal spanning years. I considered my options, carefully consulting with Thomas and my therapist before making a decision. Then I called my father and asked for a meeting. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. My father had aged dramatically. His once robust frame now stooped gray hair, thinned to wisps. When he spotted me, his eyes filled with tears, but he made no move to embrace me. We sat across from each other like strangers, 7 years of silence between us. "You look well," he offered tentatively. "I heard about your company, the surgical mapping system. I always knew you were brilliant." I nodded, unsure how to respond to this fragment of pride from a man who had thrown me away. We made stilted small talk about the weather, about my education, circling the real reason for our meeting like wary boxers. Finally, I placed a folder on the table. "Ashley came to see me," I said quietly. "She gave me these." My father's hands shook as he reviewed the documents. Color drained from his face with each page he turned. When he reached Stephanie's handwritten account of framing me, he closed his eyes, physically recoiling from the words. "I cannot." He began, his voice breaking. "I never questioned her story. Not once. What kind of father does that make me? The kind who was manipulated by an expert." I replied, surprised by my own calm. "She planned everything meticulously." He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "How can you even speak to me? After what I did, I am still figuring that out," I admitted. "But I needed you to know the truth, and I needed to hear you say you believe it." "I believe it," he whispered, "and I will spend whatever time I have left trying to make it up to you, if you will let me." We talked for hours. He detailed Stephanie's gradual takeover of the company finances, how she had isolated him from former friends and business associates, the slow realization that things were not what they seemed. He had begun investigating discrepancies in the company accounts when he had his heart attack, which was what prompted Ashley's decision to come forward. Stephanie had already been served divorce papers by the time of our meeting. The evidence of embezzlement had been turned over to the authorities. She was facing criminal charges and had fled to an unknown location, her accounts frozen. "The company can be saved," my father said, looking exhausted. "But I cannot do it alone. I understand if you want nothing to do with it or with me. You have built your own successful life." I did not answer immediately. Forgiveness would not come easily or quickly. The pain of his immediate distrust of choosing Stephanie over his own son ran too deep for simple resolution. But there was a path forward, narrow and uncertain though it might be. We agreed to meet with a family therapist. I would review the company finances with my team of advisors to determine what could be salvaged. Small steps toward rebuilding something that would never be the same but might someday be whole in a different way. 3 months later, Stephanie was arrested trying to cross the Canadian border with false identification. She ultimately pled guilty to multiple fraud charges to avoid a longer sentence. I attended none of the hearings, having said all I needed to, in a single victim impact statement that detailed how her lies had stolen 7 years of family connection that could never be recovered. My father and I established a new working relationship. I brought my tech expertise to the family business, modernizing operations while he handled the client relationships he had built over decades. We kept our personal interactions separate at first, gradually easing into more comfortable territory during weekly dinners, where we carefully rebuilt trust. Ashley and I maintained limited contact. I could not look at her without remembering her role in my downfall, but I recognized the courage it took to come forward. She moved across the country for a fresh start, sending occasional updates that I acknowledged with brief responses. The inheritance that Stephanie had schemed for eventually came to me, though by then it meant little compared to the business I had built myself. I established a foundation in my mother's name to help young adults who had been estranged from family, providing housing, education, and legal support. It was the best way I could think of to create meaning from the pain I had experienced. Looking back on everything now, I realize that rebuilding what was broken has been more valuable than any inheritance could ever be. The journey from betrayal to healing taught me things about resilience I never could have learned otherwise. Truth has its own timeline, revealing itself when we are ready to face it. My relationship with my father will never be what it was before Stephanie entered our lives. The easy trust of childhood has been replaced by something more cautious, but perhaps more honest. We work at it every day, acknowledging the damage while refusing to be defined by it. Sometimes I wonder how differently my life would have unfolded without that false accusation. Would I have simply stepped into my predetermined role at the family company? Would I have developed the drive and independence that led to my own innovations? Pain shaped me in ways comfort never could have, though I would never wish such an innovation's experience on anyone. The most profound lesson came from understanding that while we cannot control what happens to us, we alone decide how it changes us. I could have surrendered to bitterness, letting Stephanie's cruelty define my future. Instead, I chose to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. My father and I now run both companies as partners, combining traditional manufacturing with cutting-edge technology. The foundation we established helps dozens of young people annually find their footing after family trauma. Some wounds never fully heal, but they can become the source of purpose and compassion if we allow them to. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone who profoundly hurt you? Was it worth the effort, or did you find more peace in moving forward separately? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more real stories of resilience and redemption. And remember, sometimes the family we choose is as important as the one we are born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in whatever challenges you may be facing in your own life.